Thank you for joining us on another episode of Beyond the Listing. I am your host, Jeremy Madore, and today I'm sitting with...
I'm Lauren O'Brien from Leading Edge Real Estate.
Lauren, thank you so much for coming into the studio. It was a pleasure to have you here and to catch up with you a little bit.
I'm honored that you asked me to come, Jeremy.
It's been a number of years since I've been able to service your account personally. And I know that, we're working with you on a continual basis, and I know that you have your favorites and everything. And but it was always really nice to work with you one-on-one when we were at our listings together.
You as well. And then when you grew, which I was delighted for you, I was like, oh, shoot, Jeremy, you're not going to be coming to do my photos anymore. Yeah. But your team is wonderful.
Yeah, believe me when I say it's a double-edged sword, right? On the one hand, to see the business grow as it has been... it's honestly really been fulfilling for me.
Oh, I bet.
But it's also been a bit of a bummer because the more it grows, the less time I have to do the thing that I enjoy the most, quite frankly, which is working one-on-one with people. Being in the home, talking to the homeowners, talking to the realtors, that really was probably my favorite part of the job when I was on the road full-time.
Well, I still always know that you're there, and if I do need you or need to call you or whatever, I still know you're going to be there. Exactly.
Just a phone call away. And as I indicated offline, I every once in a while do find myself back in the field covering for somebody who's sick, or if there's an outlier situation. I was in Wells. Yep. All that kind of stuff does still happen, and so I still am on the road, just in a very different sense. Right. So. But anyhow, so thank you for coming into the studio, and I can't wait to get to the conversation we're about to have.
Me too.
So I wanted to save the catching up as much as possible to this conversation here, because being with Madore Photography for as long as you have, I really admire your loyalty, your experience that you share with us from an educational perspective. I've loved to see how your business has changed over the years. You've had a lot of family changes even during that time, and you've seen our girls grow up.
Yes. Oh my God.
We've seen Alexandra go off to college and graduate. She's been through all of those life changes too. So I wanted to have you on so that we can kind of share a little bit of that with our audience, because it is about the relationships for us here at...
I know, and as I was thinking back, I'm like, I think just starting out. You were a one-man band. You came every time.
I was, yeah. Yep, I was a one-man band. When I first started, it was in Andover. I was living in Andover. We were renting at the time. And within about 2 years of starting doing this, we were able to save enough for our down payment on a home, and we moved to Leominster. Yeah. And that's when it was interesting, because when I first started, only about 25% of the homes that were available on MLS when I was looking were professionally photographed. And now, if you have 10% that aren't professionally photographed, God. I'd be shocked.
Totally. And when I see the ones that aren't, I'm like, I wish I could write a letter or call that seller and say, do you know what an injustice your realtor is doing?
Yeah, I wish that too. There's unfortunately no great way of handling that. Right. Hopefully at some point they understand the value of marketing. But you can't do that. Right. There's going to be people who always eat at McDonald's.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's not nutrition, right? And so likewise, taking phone photos or your own camera photos isn't really photography.
What's the saying? You can bring the horse to water, but you can't make them drink.
Yep. So there's a lot of that, unfortunately, that still permeates throughout every industry. But what we do is, getting back to the whole Maggie being with us, what we do is we hire for people who understand the value of what it is that we do. Right. And of course, we try to connect with clients who understand the value, but not necessarily the photography portion, but the whole client experience portion, right? Because it's not about just the photos. It's about making sure that we are, in fact, part of the realtor's trusted team. Right. Totally. And you've worked very hard to assemble your core group of trusted vendors. Who are some of your favorites? I mean,
well, you guys,
fine,
for my photographer.
Pat myself on the back
I've got
there.
my real estate attorney who, when people say that I want to use my, somebody else, and I'm like, I shudder. I'm like, I just know that I've got the utmost of confidence in Bob Peterson, and I can sleep at night knowing that he's looked at the purchase and sales, he's got them covered. I can call Bob on a Saturday night at 9:00 or text him, and he might say, hey, Lauren, I'm out for dinner with Carla, but he's going to answer and respond, which is wonderful. I've got some lenders that I just know, same thing, that they're going to be pre-approved. They're going to get to the closing table. Same thing, I can call them on the weekends. And I don't know, I don't think you've ever met my son, but I've got a son who's older than Alexandra, and he owns a moving company.
Oh, okay.
And
I think you may have mentioned that before.
Yeah, so Matthew. So never in a million years would I ever have referred a mover.
Sure.
But now that I've got Matthew,
you have an inside job.
I do, but I know that he's going to be there, or he's got people that he trusts, and usually you don't know who you're getting on a moving crew. So that's been nice to, feed him business and him be able to handle my clients. Not that he can feed me business, because it's usually, if he gets a call from another realtor, they're already selling. But just to know that confidence that.
Sure.
And he's just got a way with himself. I always said with my husband and I, we were always very quiet when we grew up. And Matthew was like a 40-year-old man at 4.
Okay.
Always had such an outgoing personality.
Okay.
But he makes these people that he's moving feel comfortable and at ease.
Yeah.
And, he does say, I don't know where he's got this stat, but dying, moving, and I forget what the third thing is. Like, those are the most stressful times in somebody's life.
Probably either birthing your first child or getting married, potentially.
And, and just for him to be able to bring a calm to that situation is nice.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I can sympathize with that. Yeah. I can sympathize with that. It's important, because you'd think that, a moving company, though, that sounds like it's just, physical labor transaction. It isn't. It isn't.
Right. And, he's got to be there all the time, just because you don't know.
Yep.
Well, you got to make sure that you've got good guys, because, it's manual labor. It's not that, you're getting somebody who's, wants to be a mover.
Yeah, not many people wake up in the morning and want to be a mover.
Right. Yeah.
At least with like photography, people actually, seek it out, maybe a little bit more aggressively. But you do wake up in the morning and want to be of service to others.
Yes, totally.
Right. And so that's obviously, when we started talking before we started rolling, we were talking about customer service and how prevalent it needs to be in our operations. And it's hard, because when you go interview somebody, it's really difficult to kind of tease out of them what kind of customer service person they're going to be. Right. They might be able to tell you what they've done in the past, or they might know specific lingo in regards to a certain section of career or business, so they can talk the talk, right? Mm-hmm. But then when they go to walk the walk, how do they truly treat your clients? Right. And are they going to embody the values that you have as a company? And that's hard sometimes, because you're putting your trust in individuals who are supposed to support your brand, and then you really need to give them that kind of you need to give them the leeway, the space to prove that they can support your brand, and it requires a lot of commitment.
Yeah, and with your photographers, you're getting repeat customers, but with my business, it's a different customer every time. So I need to learn their personalities, learn what they want, what they don't want, how much hand-holding they want.
Yeah.
If I can push them a little bit.
Every seller is different, I'm sure.
Yes.
And just like every house is different, so is the personality of the individual.
Right.
Yeah. So you've had some adventures. I'm sure you've had, you've seen probably a good amount at this point.
I definitely have. Yep. And I say with every transaction, still learning.
Yeah.
It's never one and done, or everything. It's always learning and making myself better.
Yeah. So for our audience's benefit, what were you doing before real estate?
How far do you want me to go back?
Well, just
so I went to Bentley College, thinking I wanted to be an accountant.
Yeah.
I took my first semester of accounting, and I said, I couldn't, as much as I loved numbers,
Yeah.
and I still do, I just could not see myself at a desk with a ledger,
Yeah.
debits and credits, and now it's all computerized, but I just knew I didn't want to do that. So I transitioned to their marketing and management
Oh, okay.
program and graduated from Bentley with a marketing and management degree. Went into corporate marketing for a number of years. And then I was fortunate enough to stay home when I had my kids, when I had Matthew, and then, a couple of years later, Alexandra. But I could never fully stay home. I always needed to be doing something.
Sure.
Like I did pampered chef.
Okay.
All kinds of other things. But my husband was a state trooper and worked crazy hours. So
Yep.
I could never really say, oh, I'm going to go and work for,
The
Mother's
balance wasn't there.
Right,
Yeah.
because it was me. I was home all the time,
Sure.
days, nights, weekends with the kids. And then, unfortunately, Kevin had a pretty serious auto accident on the job, and he was out of work for a year and a half.
Okay.
And then I decided, all right, well, Kevin's home. I can go back to work a
Okay.
little bit. And I had a friend who was a mortgage broker, and he said, why don't you become a real estate appraiser? And I was like, what is that? So I took the class, really not knowing anything,
Yep.
not knowing that I needed to have somebody sponsor me, basically, and I had to be a trainee for 2 years. My aunt at the time was a realtor, and she met this young real estate appraiser, so she connected us.
Okay.
And I worked with her for several years, and then the market crashed. And she said, that's it. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to go to the mall, hang up clothes. I don't want to own my own business. And I was like, oh, shoot, I enjoyed working. So it was the summertime. The kids were home. That was good. And I saw...
Was this 08, 09?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm dating myself a little bit.
No, that's fine.
And when again, dating myself because I was looking in the newspaper for a job,
Yep.
just, this part-time job. So this job came at a real estate office in Wilmington, town next door to North Reading where we lived.
Yep.
And I went, and it was a mother's hours job, kind of running the office, doing everything. So I did that for
mostly administrative?
Yep, but
Okay.
doing everything, like doing the advertising. I literally went out and would take some pictures with the camera
Sure,
that we
sure.
had.
Back
Worked
in the days of the office camera.
Yes, definitely. Worked
Yeah.
with the attorneys on the purchase and sales, whatever needed to be done, direct marketing, and it was flexible, and I could still leave at 2, pick my kids up.
Sure.
And then as I was there longer and longer, my kids were getting older, I said, I should probably get my real estate license because I can totally do what they're doing.
Well, you were seeing the transactional portion of the job in regards to like the comings and the goings, what needed to happen. So you saw the systems.
Yes, I saw the systems. I knew the systems.
Yep.
I knew the marketing aspect of it.
Yep.
I knew I had the customer service skills and the personality
Sure.
to do it. So I got my real estate license and worked there for a number of years, still as a realtor. And Zillow was brand new then.
Yeah.
And so those Zillow leads were true leads. They were literally
Sure.
people who were clicking, yes, I want to talk to an agent.
right.
And I was able to convert an awful lot of Zillow leads
Okay.
who, then were first-time home buyers. And as the years went on and they got better jobs and the market
They'd
changed,
upgrade their house.
they upgraded. But
Sure.
I always knew that it wasn't just a transaction.
Yep.
It was a client-building relationship.
Right.
And that's what I did from day one. I always collected birthdays from people and calendared their home anniversaries.
Okay.
So I was, sending a handwritten birthday
Yeah,
card,
sure.
reaching out, a month after they closed, 3 months, 6 months, a year. And I still do that to this day. So I know that I have built a client-based relationship.
Yep.
And then I joined Leading Edge Real Estate, which we were Remax Leading Edge. And that was the best thing that I could have ever done. I didn't really realize that when I say this, that I didn't really think that real estate was a real job. I just thought it was a part-time
Sure.
mother's job.
Yep.
And when I said that to one of the broker owners at Leading Edge, they were like, oh my God, are you kidding? But I didn't realize that there were real estate companies out there that had a compliance department, had a finance department, a design department, broker owners, training. So like I said, this was the best career move
Right.
I could have done for myself, was leaving the small brokerage where I got a foundation and then joining Leading Edge where where I am, and I've just felt that I've built my business from there every year. I've got a team member now. I have a transaction manager. Alexandra, who's my daughter, even though she's got a full-time job, she does have a real estate license. Because I said, you just never know, Alexandra. She's, she probably like your kids. They've been with you on appointments, and even with COVID, and I was doing all my meetings via Zoom. Between her and my husband, they're like, we could close our eyes and we could probably recite what you say. But she probably has more knowledge than lots of new realtors. So I said, just get your
because she was exposed to it on a daily basis.
Yes, and she actually came with me when she was, on summer vacation. She was a kindergartner and coming with me on, real estate appraising appointments. So she really's got a background of it. But, she's got a full-time job. I want her to focus on that and do that. And when the time's right, maybe she can join more as a full-time person.
Yep. When the time is right.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. And even our own girls, they've gone through phases of, Daddy, I want to be a photographer. Then, Daddy, I want to be a stager. And, and they keep changing, obviously their career focus and such. And Samantha, our oldest, she wants to be a teacher. Yeah. And it's funny because she is the one that ran that gamut. She wanted to be a photographer, and then she wanted to just be a drone pilot only. And then she wanted to be a stager. And then she wanted to be an interior decorator.
Wow.
And then she started tutoring other people at high school for biology. And she had a lot of fun with it. And one of the teachers approached her and said, you really want to consider taking this seriously because people listen to you.
Yes. And
you approach them, with problem-solving personality, but individualizing it to them so that they understand it a bit more personally instead of just education.
Right, because not everybody learns the same way.
Right, and so having kids that grow up around us doing, seeing us do the business that we do, whether it's photographing a house, selling a house, whatever it might be, it's interesting to see how that some of the information just really stays with them, and others they might take for granted or whatever, but it's interesting to hear that Alexandra's still part of all of that, because I remember when I first met her, we were in Reading at one of the houses that you were doing, and she and I hit it off really nicely as far as her personality and her career goals, and it was just very interesting to see a younger person, she was in high school at the time, take a career path so seriously, as far as actually have desire and motivation underneath her, instead of just simply she wasn't in it for the money. She wasn't in it for anything other than, I love understanding people and I love interacting with people.
And I think that my husband, Kevin, and I, we're both hard workers, and we've instilled that in Matthew and Alexandra. Yep. And you don't see a lot of younger kids or, now these 20-something-year-olds who have those goals or work ethics.
Unfortunately, that is starting to really show its age, right? And it's troubling because when we when we hire for somebody working for us, we get well over 100, 150 applicants for a given job opening. And I'd love to say we have to pick of the litter, but the truth of the matter is we don't really, because out of those applicants, there might be 10 or 15 that actually have a suitable list of experience, not necessarily people who are already photographers, but people who have established a path in their own life. And that's really what it comes down to. Right. If I can see an obvious career arc to somebody, as in they leveled up or they stayed with one job long enough to get the next department, right? So if you started off as an associate, clerk, and then you became assistant manager, that's a dead ringer for me. Yeah. Right. But if you went from associate to associate to associate to associate, we're done. Right.
Exactly.
Right? And so, we get 100, 150 applicants, and then you can see just based on their patience and their application, who the people are who are trying to work hard versus just have a job. Right. And it's hard and it's disconcerting, unfortunately, because I have high hopes for our kids, not just them individually, but their generation in general. But I definitely wait on bated breath to see what ends up happening business-wise.
I know. I just
So-
hired a new transaction manager. My other transaction manager was with me for about 3 years. Wonderful, fabulous. Helped me get all the systems in place. I thought that I was detail oriented and organized,
Sure.
and she took that to
a whole other level.
whole
Yeah.
other level. And then she decided that she was going to move on, and so I advertised for the job. And I can't tell you the number of people who reached out, but then never followed back up again.
Oof.
Which I was like,
Oof.
seriously?
Yeah, that's a hard one.
Yeah, it is. And I was
That's a
like, all
hard
right,
one.
well, this is all about follow-up. So if you can't respond back to my email or my
Yep.
phone call, then that's not going to work.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. And even if you went to spam, that's on their
Yes.
end
Yes.
too. You know, like
Right.
that's not on your end.
Right.
You can't assume that you're going to spam. They need to assume that you might go to spam,
Yes.
right? Same thing for us when we go to hire. We have a skills assessment that we have people fill out, and there's two very basic. You're only allowed to have. We use Indeed. You're only allowed to have 2 skills assessments attached to your job. You can't have anything more than that, so they don't let you. If I had it my way, I'd have 4 or 5 of
Yeah.
them. But we specifically look for detail oriented, and we look for customer service skill sets. So those 2 skill sets, I don't care who you are, where you came from. If you have good customer service and are a detail oriented individual, I can teach you how to take real estate
Right.
photography. Because that's really the premise of it
Yeah,
all, right?
totally.
And the number of people who apply to the job who don't even bother to take the skills assessments, they might as well just be. They just wasted my time
Right.
for even clicking on their name, and they wasted their time for applying for the job that they had no serious interest in.
Exactly.
You know.
Yeah.
So I really hope that it's funny. I wasn't expecting to have a jobs conversation, but no, it's an important conversation.
Yes.
You know. I listen to a lot of business podcasts and everything, and company culture for me is a very big thing. Having people that work with us, work for our team, be part of our team, who truly believe what it is that you and I are talking about, you know, because it's very easy to just be like, oh yeah, I make a decent paycheck over at Madore Photography, and you know, I'm happy with my job. Well, yeah, but why?
Right.
Are you happy because you're making a good paycheck, or are you happy because that's supporting your lifestyle and you get to go to work with some, you know, and see some awesome homes and tour some awesome countrysides? Because let's face it, we do a lot of
Yes.
driving.
Yes.
And if you don't like spending time in the car, this is not a job for
Yeah.
you. We've lost some pretty good photographers because it's too much driving, right? And so there's really a lot that goes into what makes a great career.
Right. And it is usually about the why. Like,
Yeah.
why are you doing it? What's motivating you?
Yeah. So you got into real estate because you went for your appraisal license? Did you
Yeah.
ever get through on that?
I did.
Okay.
I did that for a number of years.
All right, so you
and then the
indicated
market
that. Okay, all
crashed.
right.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
So while you were doing appraisals, the market crashed.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yes.
So that was actually my first experience as well. So it's not something I talk about a lot. One of my first jobs out of my first year of college, I had just gotten my vehicle license, and I was working courier service for an appraisal company. And the person who owned the company was trying to convince me to get into like being like an actual assistant appraiser. And I was very resistant to it because I'm going to go be a computer programmer.
Right.
That's what I'm going to go do, you know, and not realizing how much value there was with that offer. And by the time I did realize, he had already filled that position, and, you know, such is history. But yeah, my first job was,
And what were you doing as a courier for them?
I was going to different town halls and
Oh.
collecting the tax records,
Yes,
the tax
okay.
cards, the property cards,
Yeah.
looking up the plot plans
Yeah.
for the maps and everything.
So back in the day when it was not online and we had to go to the town hall.
Right. And taking pictures of the exterior of
Oh,
homes.
wow. Oh.
And so I just a single,
Yeah.
right? So I'd go up and I had this, I think it was called the Sony Mavica camera, and it wrote to a floppy disk. So you put the floppy disk
Yeah.
inside of it, and it went ka-chunk, ka-chunk, ka-chunk to record it. And it was probably like a 1.5 megapixel camera, and at the time that was big.
Yeah.
This was probably 01, I'm guessing.
Probably just around the
2000,
time I got-
2001.
Yeah.
I was working, this was up in Maine. Eastland Appraisal is the name of the company that I first started at. And Pete, the guy who owned the place, good guy, good boss. I made, I think like 650 an hour, driving around in my car, I travel all throughout central Maine and taking pictures of the exteriors of homes that were missing because we didn't have all of them. There was no online database.
Yes.
And going to the actual town offices and getting photocopies and paying for the photocopies and stuff, and with petty cash and everything, and it was interesting, right?
Yeah.
But anyway,
yeah, my sister got her appraisal license. We did it at the same time.
Okay.
And that was same thing back in the day. You went to town hall.
Yep.
We had a map book.
Yep.
Because you didn't have a GPS. And then when MapQuest came out and we could print out the directions, we were like, whoa, we can print out the directions. So one of us would take turns driving, the other one would read the directions. We'd do all that, then go back and do the report.
Yep.
Yeah.
I remember when Garmin first came out with their
my
first,
gosh.
I was on that thing like that. And it's funny because when I was working the courier job, I was also doing part-time at Staples. And so Staples at the time was, launching new computer systems every week because that's how quickly things were advancing. And when they first came out with the more modernized, quote unquote, GPSs, it was like the first thing on my dashboard. I'm like, this is worth its weight in gold.
Yes.
So yeah, but I had the DeLorme map.
Yes.
And
I cannot, to this day, I still can't read a map book, but then you'd be getting car sick and you're like trying to figure out where you were or where to go. And I was like, so when we could print out those MapQuest directions, that was huge.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, you don't need a map to get around Reading.
Nope, definitely not.
You know that like the back of your hand.
Yep, definitely.
Give yourself a street, exactly where it is.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's the importance of obviously really honing in on a zip code. Right. Reading is your primary.
So that's where our office is.
Yep.
I lived in North Reading for 28 years. So tried to focus around Reading, North Reading, but then being in Wilmington for a number of years at the real estate office, a lot of people were looking there.
Sure.
So now I'll go anywhere, and I always would have gone anywhere. I say anywhere north of north of Boston, whether it's 93, 128, Route 1, 95. Never turn away that small little client who's buying or selling that little, one-bedroom condo because you know or you hope that in years that they're going to sell or refer you to a friend.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I always just treat everybody with the same level of care and respect that you'd want to be shown yourself. Yeah, some good old golden rule.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, and it's true. Real estate, obviously, as you know, is a feast or famine type of industry, and nowhere is that more true, I think, than in New England with winters being what we say crickets. Like literally, you can hear the crickets chirp. I mean, obviously, it's winter, but we sit on our hands from November until February-ish. So for every one listing that we get in the winter, we might get like 6 during the spring market. Right. And so how do you support, yourself in the off months and everything? And obviously you just have to be really good with.
Well, I've always been a budgeter and a planner.
Yep.
So, and I think that brings me even back to before my Bentley days.
Yep.
Always was a saver. And so I fortunately don't live paycheck to paycheck. Yeah. And when I first started real estate, I was fortunate that my husband was working full-time as well, because I don't see how people can do it if they don't have somebody else. My first closing, I can remember.
That's high risk.
Yes. Yeah. I got my license in January, and I had my first closing in August.
Wow.
So, yes,
wow.
8 months.
Okay.
8 months.
Okay.
So had I been the sole person that was relying on me for income or, on my own.
It never would have happened.
Never could have done it. So I don't know how people do it who don't have the luxury that I had.
Yeah.
Or even I had a home inspection, kind of digressing into another subject, but I had a home inspection about 2 weeks ago, which I haven't, and it was for my buyer. The house had been on the market for a little while. I haven't had a home inspection on one of my properties that I've been the listing agent for 4 years. I've been very lucky, a good negotiator.
Okay.
But I had a home inspection from my buyer, and I said, I can't imagine how these new realtors who came in it even 4 years ago.
Okay, got it.
And, no one goes to the office anymore. Everybody works remote. That's how I learned an awful lot, going to the office, listening to people.
Yes.
But so much valuable experience in going on a home inspection. And now these new realtors don't have that luxury.
That's an interesting observation.
But I don't know how these newer agents are learning and making it with how crazy tough the business is now.
Interesting. That's disconcerting maybe, but I'm curious, the continuing education classes that are available, do they cover a lot of this stuff already, or do they think that they cover more than they do?
So I don't think I've ever taken a continuing ed class that has covered a home inspection, or even if it does, you're not in a house.
Right.
Looking at
you're
the
talking
electric
theory.
panel. Exactly. Looking up and, that's knob and tube wiring, or, maybe there was, and I always preface, I'm not a home inspector, but I've been on a number of home inspections that I can pick out these things and point these things out. But younger realtors who are
They don't have that. They don't have that knowledge because they haven't been around. So what you're talking about there is through osmosis, right? Like you're just simply in an office environment where you're hearing a little bit of hubbub, and you're just kind of hearing that general office busy work, so to speak, where casual information is being exchanged. But there's so much education tied into that information. It's funny. Before you came, I had another realtor that we were recording another podcast. And he asked me, he goes, Jeremy, he goes, what's the, you like in Maine? I'm like, yeah. I said, I do very much, but I think the greatest thing that I miss is being in the office, because when you're in the office, not only are you getting to socialize and build a team and have a better culture, you're also hearing all the little bits of we're talking just minor things. We're not talking about, a big problem happened today, I never heard about it. Right. No, I hear about all that stuff. But it's the little minor things that you really have to take even closer attention to.
Yeah.
Because if there's a giant red flag sticking up, well, I mean, we can all identify that it's a giant red flag. However, if it's like a baby blue flag, but there's a flag nonetheless, and it's just tiny little flag that's just like, by the way, there's something over here that you might want to hear about in 8 months, right? Being around for all those little bits and pieces of information, those little morsels of education, it has so much value attached to it.
It does.
So much value.
It definitely does.
And I think to the in-office thing, at working from home or on location or remote work, I think that culture is going to create its own long-term problems through lack of training and education for people's career paths. And I'm not talking about profitability for a company. I'm talking about the profitability of the individual over the course of their lives. Because how can you truly, really absorb and learn and grow and push yourself if you're not amongst people who have done that already, and you're just basically taking the scraps off their table?
Right. And the other thing that my company does that feeds into that, when COVID first started, we were having meetings every single morning, 5 days a week. In the beginning, everyone joined, and then it kind of dwindled off. And then we went to 3 days a week and 2 days a week, and now we still meet every single Thursday at 8:30 in the morning.
Good.
And 8:30 in the morning, everybody can be there unless you've got kids that you've got to bring to school, but you can listen to it on your phone or...
Sure, there's options.
There are options, and I'm amazed at the same people that join every week, and lots of us are seasoned agents, but I wouldn't miss that 8:30 call for anything, because I just know if I'm picking up a tidbit from you or a tidbit from you, or even able to share some experience myself, I think it's so valuable.
Yep. That's why I listen to business podcasts. Every once in a while, I mean, like I start mentally tuning out when I'm listening to it sometimes, where it's like, it's like music, right? You're driving along and there's music playing. You're not really consciously like hearing each of the lyrics or whatever, and you're not really internalizing the message. It's more like the feel of it. But when you're listening to podcasts, if you're just letting the podcaster just like talk on and you're not really grasping what they're saying, you should probably just listen to music instead, right? But every once in a while, I'll be listening to, these business podcasts, and a lot of times I'm like, Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. I agree with that. I agree with that. And then other times I'm like, really like, no, that's a horrible message, whatever. But I have a feeling about it. I have a belief about it. I have an opinion. And many times I walk out of I finish my drive and I'm like, what did I learn today? And I've learned a bunch of things.
Yeah.
Like either it solidified some of the belief systems that I had in regards to like my value and all that kind of stuff for the company, or it said, Jeremy, slap, wake up,
Yeah.
And it's important for both of
Right.
those things to occur. And you can't have that happen to you if you're in your own echo chamber.
Right.
Right. And so you have to be pushed along or challenged by, I guess is the best word, people around you on a consistent basis in order to continue growing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's Jeremy's thoughts on.
Yeah. No, and I
employment
always
these
feel
days.
that if you can take away one nugget and apply that, you don't have to implement all 20 things that they laid out, but even if you apply one thing every time
Yep.
and grow yourself and grow your business, that's the only way
Yep.
to do it.
Now, before you and I sat down, you came in and you had a serious conversation with a friend of yours, and you had shared with me some advice that you had passed along to her, and I think the advice that you shared with her is appropriate for everybody who's on the journey of life, and that is to, when something good or bad happens in your life, don't go straight for the reaction.
Right.
Let it sit with you for a moment, right? And switching gears real quick to homeowners, whether it be a buyer or a seller, the process of buying or selling a home, let alone moving and marketing and right, all those gears that go into the machine of real estate. A lot of times we don't sit and appreciate or let ourselves truly feel where we are at that point in time. Do you work with your clients to try to encourage them to
I do.
look at it
and
that way?
I recently moved myself.
Yep.
So after doing real estate for all these years, and you're just kind of like a robot, and you're just doing it.
Sure.
And then when you go and do it yourself, you're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
How did I get my house ready, get my house staged, declutter,
Yeah.
get rid of 28 years of stuff,
I can't imagine.
make it look
can't
perfect, have open houses, then pack everything up and move and go on to
Yep.
the next house. And so now I can say to my sellers, I've been there.
Yeah.
And I know the CEO of our company, who I feel she's brilliant, Linda. Shout out to Linda. She always says, when you're selling your home, take care of yourself, because it's inevitable. You always end up getting sick. And I was running. And I never get sick, but sure enough, I got sick. And I was like, oh my God. But I do always share that with my sellers, because I'm like, you need to take care of yourself. And you really do, because there's so much emotion and stress.
Yeah.
And
it mounts.
And you're doing so many more things on top of everything else you had to do.
So the process of buying or selling is already taxing as it is.
Yes.
Strictly financially.
Yes.
And then logistics on top of all of that. But the emotional drain that it actually creates or allows happen, maybe, I don't know, is significantly larger than a lot of people, I think, from the outside give it credit for.
Right.
I think that it's very easy to just glaze over or gloss over how easy parts of the equation are. Because let's face it, if you break it down into systems, each and every one of these things is very digestible. It's like eating an elephant.
Yep. And that's what I say.
Right?
It's not rocket science,
No.
but you've just got to make sure
Yeah.
you're doing
Right.
A to Z
You've got
in
to
order.
just step through it.
And
But
if you've got to switch over here, you've got to be able to pivot, but come
Yep.
back and keep things on track.
Yep. And so I think a lot of times we in the industry, we make it look easy because we're just so good at what we do. And it's not that we're perfect at it or anything like that. It's that we work hard at it. Right. We know the systems. It's the back of our hand. This is muscle memory. And so I think that it's easy to take for granted each of these steps until you have to walk a mile in that shoe, in those set of shoes,
right.
you know?
And I still try to bring myself back to me being that buyer and seller. And I still say I was my worst buyer and my worst seller. Even though I knew everything I needed to do, I was still the worst buyer and seller. But I just, I've got to bring myself back to remember that, because I had a client, the same client who we just had the home inspection, and he was like, oh my God, I was so nervous all day. And I was like, really? We were negotiating the offer and the waiting part of it.
Sure.
And he said, but I just knew that, and he had bought with me before. He said, I just knew that you were going to be there and everything was going to be taken care of. And I was like, thank you. But I do still have to slow down sometimes and say, okay, Lauren, even though you do this 20, 30 times a year, this might be the very first time and the only time someone is going to do that. So that's really how I like to approach it. And I've got lots of older clients too, who I know that I need to hold their hand and do as much as I can for them, because they may not have anyone else to do it. And it's a feeling of gratitude and satisfaction when afterwards they say, oh my God, thank you. Or, I can't believe how much easier that went than we thought it was going to be.
Yeah. It's very important to recognize that this is maybe somebody's one every 20 years, right? And you might have 20 in 1 year, right?
Exactly.
So you're literally dealing with, 400 transactions within that timeline that they do one. And that's a significant ratio, right? We're on track to do probably about 3,800 listings this year as a company.
Wow.
And so for us, it literally is muscle memory. We know what we're doing, right? It's a system. But if you try to take that approach when you go into someone's house, it's not going to fly.
Definitely not. No.
Right? Because your whole day in their eyes is about that 1 hour or 2 hours that you're at that property. And if you don't treat that 1 or 2 hours like it's literally the only thing that you're doing that day, then you're doing it wrong.
Right. And I write down, if they say, this table has so much importance to us or whatever it is, like I'm jotting that down, even though I know it doesn't matter, but to them it matters. So I just, I do. I listen, and it's even better to listen than to talk, and just let them tell you what is important to them and why they need to go from point A to point B and what I'm going to do to get them there. Frictionless. As frictionless as possible.
For sure. But that's your position within it, right?
Right.
And you're a skid greaser, right? Like you're all about making sure that there's the most minimal amount of resistance in the pipeline. And that, of course, that means, when you review your offers, you're really reviewing them for their entirety, not just because maybe it's a higher price, but there's also financing or whatever, right? And so it really is about kind of playing the right cards.
Absolutely. And I even tell my sellers, this was in the height of COVID. I had a house, we had 53 offers on this house. And some people, when I've got the buyer and they're the listing agent, I'll ask them, how do you handle multiple offers? And they're like, oh, well, we're going to see when they come in, or I'll see what my seller wants to do, or my seller was so overwhelmed because they got 12 offers. And I'm like, your seller wasn't overwhelmed. You were overwhelmed. Like, we're the ones who are supposed to control the situation. But when I had 53 offers, literally went back to all 53 agents, and that underdog really took the leap and became the winner. I just don't understand how agents can say, I'm going to go back to the top 3, or you never hear back from them at all, and then you see it contingent the next day. It just, we're not doing a service to our clients, which that's what it's all about, in my opinion.
So getting back to the job applications thing, whenever I look through the job applicants, I mean, obviously for me, when I, if I have 100, 150 job applicants, I filter it based off of easy criteria. For example, did somebody fill out the assessment? If you didn't, you're getting a rejection letter right now. I'm just going to let you know, right? And that automatically goes out. Boom. I'm not even going to bother going anything further than that because you didn't meet my criteria. Similarly, with an offer, if you're not meeting some basic guidelines, bye. But you do need to follow up with every single one of those, whether it be a form copy paste that you want to do, go ahead. but just let people know, you got to close those doors properly, because otherwise you're going to have a reputation of somebody who's just kind of, you're maybe casting a net when you throw an offer to Lauren O'Brien, like you don't want to have that reputation.
Right. Oh, exactly. Exactly. Because I know I'm going to meet that person again, and
for sure
I'm going to be the buyer and they're going to have the listing. And I always want to make sure that I've treated them the way I want to be treated.
Yep. It's a hard business. It's a hard business because there's personalities involved. Whenever people get involved in anything, we make it complicated, right?
Yes.
But that's just emotion. That's human nature.
Yep.
And it's a challenge to navigate all of that as an agent. But I from an outside perspective, I see that you do it well. I think that you have such a wonderful demeanor about you that it's just easy to talk to you. Mm-hmm. It's easy to relate to you. You always inquire as to how things genuinely are, not just the weather's nice kind of thing. Like you and I have always had some really nice, like grassroots kinds of conversations, which I don't get that with all of our clients. I personally have nurtured it in a lot of the clients that we have relationships with. Not to say that it wasn't there before with them. It's just that we've developed it together, right? And those are the ones that honestly are the most solid relationships that we have until this day. So it's awesome to see that you have that ranking really high for importance as well.
Yeah, no, I do. I feel it. For this job, you have to.
You really do. Really do. Well, it's been a pleasure having you sit.
Likewise, and I was honored that you called me and wanted me to come. I was like, wow.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. I'm happy to have you here.
Thanks.
We started off with a small circle locally, so that people weren't like, I have to drive an hour to your studio.
So I was like, Jeremy, do you know I moved?
There is that. But other than that, we are looking to get involved in more of these conversations with our core client group, so that we can kind of give them that exposure that they've allowed us to engage in, and we appreciate it very much.
Well, you're welcome. So. I know when you said, well, I'm driving from Maine, Lauren, I was like, oh, that's right, you are.
Yeah, no, I came down yesterday. I stopped in Wells to do a photo session on the way down.
Nice.
And then I stopped in Andover again. There was I made a scheduling snafu. I filled in for Danielle on Monday, and I made my own scheduling snafu, and I got myself out of it. Because that's what I try to do whenever that happens.
Well, I like when you get your emails that Jeremy filling and wearing another hat today, right?
Yeah. No, I enjoy taking Danielle's seat whenever she's out, because it allows me to reconnect with people, obviously in the transaction setting, right? But just yesterday, I spent like 15 minutes on the phone with one of our clients. He called to ask a simple question. He got me. He's like, oh, yeah, we just caught up, And
your mom did Danielle's job before? Yep.
My mom did that for 4 years prior to Danielle.
Yes. And how's she doing?
My mom's doing fantastic. Good. Thank you for asking.
Good.
She's trying to enjoy retirement. But I think that my mother is a lot like I'm a lot like my mother in that she doesn't sit well, right? She is a doer, by nature. So it's not that she's not a busy person though. My mother genuinely appreciates it most when she's doing something of value and she's contributing purposefully.
Oh, nice.
Right. So to her, that doesn't mean just idle work. It means literally investing in someone's story, investing in someone's, goings on, whether it be her grandkids. So she has a lot of grandkids. So I'm one of 9 people myself, one of 9 children
Kids.
myself.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I'm third oldest. And combined, all 9 of us, there's 8 of us that are married. The 9th is actually getting married in October. And so the 8 that are married, we all have at least 3 kids each.
Wow.
Some of us have
at least
8 kids.
24 to 30 grandchildren?
37.
37, wow.
37 grandchildren is what my parents have. And so my mother really appreciates
nice. How lucky.
The time that she spends with the grandkids. So she's always seeking to help help my siblings with
isn't that nice?
Especially the education portion, because a few of my siblings homeschool, and so she helps write curriculums for the grandkids and stuff. And to her, education is very near and dear to her because that's what she did before she had so many kids.
Yeah.
But it's it's nice to see her active in her retirement years. I'm going to air quote that because I don't really feel like there's a retirement going on there.
Right.
So
probably like you and I, like I can't imagine ever fully retiring. I always say this is my jobby. It's my job and my hobby.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good word. Jobby. Okay. All right. My hob.
My hob.
Yeah. No, I can identify with that.
Yeah.
Because even when I'm on, when my wife and I take vacation, whether it be just alone or with the kids, I'm good for a couple days for vacation, but after that, I'm like, I gotta do something, So like, if you give me a couple days, I'm great.
Yep.
If you give me a week, halfway through, I'm antsy.
Yeah.
I want to get home.
Yeah, right.
There's a lawn to mow.
Yeah.
There's home improvements to do.
Yeah.
There's and
Yeah.
right. It just never stops. And
if you saw any of our family vacation photos, my husband and kids, I'm always on the phone because in real estate, you don't get, it's like the busiest time. I'm going on vacation. Everybody wants to buy or sell. So there's always a picture of me on my phone, me outside the restaurant on my phone.
Yep.
We were in Italy this past fall, and I was like, this is perfect because the time difference, like at 9:00 at night when I went back, it was still daytime here, so I could still catch up. And,
interesting.
Yeah.
That's good to know. Yeah. So if taking a vacation, what's that?
Good and bad, you could still catch up. And
if taking a vacation, go halfway around the world.
Yes,
so you can
exactly.
Offset it. There you go. Take that that's today's tip.
Right.
That's today's tip. Go halfway around the world if you're going to take a vacation as a realtor. Yeah.
Funny.
That's interesting. Yeah. So anyway, thank you so much for coming on the studio.
You're very welcome.
I greatly appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks.